one win away from the World Series. Is it hard to grasp?
If you would have asked me in April, yes, it's hard to grasp. But watching this team get better as the season went on, watching Aaron Judge become a superstar, watching Luis Severino become a superstar, and seeing that they were healthy at the end of the season, I'm not surprised that they've played so well in the playoffs.
All right, the old adage is the toughest one to get is the last one. Is that true, and why?
I think, yes, I think it is true. You saw it last night with the Dodgers, and now they have a bigger cushion, obviously, than the Yankees do. But when you're only one win away, you can almost taste what's next. And anytime in sports you start thinking about what's next, you don't focus on the task at hand, and that can be dangerous.
The thing that surprises me about this series, Mark, is how they have completely shut down an offense that scored 896 runs or 796 runs, one of those. It's amazing to me. They've completely neutered a great offensive team. And even in the last 3 games at the stadium, they shut down Altuve and Correa. To me, that's startling.
It is. And first thing you have to do is give a ton of credit to the Yankee pitchers. I mean, their numbers this postseason have been off the charts good. I mean, these guys are all pitching well. They seem healthy. They seem rested. Other than that kind of crazy Game 2 against the Indians with the hit by pitch and the grand slam by Chad Green, if you take that inning out of the equation, this team's ERA is at a 2. I mean, that is crazy good. That's historically good. And then you look at the Astros offense. Has just been anemic. And, for me, watching every single one of these games, I've just been disappointed in the Astros offense just with their approach. I mean, they're swinging at a ton of bad pitches. Even when they get up in the count 2-0, 3-1, they're expanding the zone, having really lazy at-bats, and the Yankees pitchers are taking advantage of that.
No, we talked about their lack of offense. We talked about how it seems like they're overwhelmed by New York, right? That they seem to be really struggling, but at the same time, they had a 4-0 lead in the 7th inning the other night, and the bullpen betrayed them. Can you, as a player, see that happen, unravel, and have it affect you the rest of the series?
You can, and I think that the issue is that when you're ahead on the road, all's good. Because when you're ahead on the road, the crowd kind of gets out of it, and you're okay. What you saw when the Yankees came back from a 4-0 deficit in Game 4 was there started to be chinks in the armor, and that Judge home run was huge. And so now the pressure goes onto the Astros bullpen, which has been really bad, and you get tight. And so on the road, when the crowd gets back into it, you start getting tight, and you saw what happened to the Astros when they got tight.
Now, they're going to face Verlander tomorrow for Game 6. He threw 124 pitches. I just gave the stat that he's done that 4 times since 2014. Once was the last game of the year. So the other 3 times, his ERA in the games that followed, 6.75. And yesterday we had on David Cohn, and David said, advantage goes to the hitter when they see a pitcher twice in a row. Would you agree? And how do you think Verlander does tomorrow?
No doubt, I would agree with that assessment. Justin Verlander's Game 2 performance was nothing short of magical. I mean, he was brilliant in that game, going 9 innings. But you have to like the way that the Yankees bats are waking up. You have to like the way that the Yankees their team's overall confidence is headed. And Justin Verlander did throw 124 pitches, and he's not 23 anymore. And now, at the same time, I still expect him to pitch well. I don't expect tomorrow's game to be a blowout, but I expect the Yankees just to do better off him than they did in Game 2.
The other day we were talking about, this is before Judge and Sanchez got back to being where they are right now, but I asked the question to Michael, after Didi Gregorius, was CeCe Sabathia so far the MVP of this playoff run? Here we are a couple days later, and now the bats have warmed up on the kids, Judge and Sanchez. But who do you believe is the MVP so far, this team in the playoffs, and who would be second?
That is so hard to say, just because this team has been so deep. They've gotten it's like a new hero every single game. It'd be hard for me not to say Masahiro Tanaka with how brilliantly he's pitched. I mean, this is a guy who's pitched 20 innings, and he's given up 2 runs in 20 innings.
Unreal.
When they needed him the most. So, for me, it all starts with starting pitching. I mean, I'll throw Tommy Kahnle in there. I mean, this guy hasn't given up a run in 10 innings in some really big spots. But this is one of those team MVP seasons where if they go on and win a World Series, it's because everybody chipped in.
Now, Dallas Keuchel yesterday, amazingly, the Yankees got to him, knocked him out, and he kind of intimated that the stadium atmosphere was intimidating. Does that surprise you, and were you ever intimidated by a stadium atmosphere as a visiting player?
I think intimidated probably isn't the right word, but I was the 10th man, what they call the 12th man in football, but that kind of extra man on the field for a visiting team is real. I felt it in Boston, during my years as a Yankee. You feel it in domes, indoors at a place like Toronto when Toronto had some good teams. You really feel it. And Minnesota, Game 3 in the ALDS in 2009, the last game in the Metrodome was the loudest game I've ever played in. And it doesn't intimidate you, but what it does is gives the other team a little bit of an advantage. That home team has an advantage when the crowd's on your side. And I think the Yankee fans are just excited about having a good young team and being in the playoffs again. A couple lean years at the stadium after a pretty nice run there when it first opened, and these fans are hungry.
Now, I'm not sure if you've been at the ballpark for the 3 previous games. You obviously have watched on TV. Compare it to the atmosphere in 2009 when the stadium first opened. Now, I thought in 2015, the wild card game was the loudest I ever heard it, even more than 2009, but Keuchel kind of pulled the plug on that. How do you remember 2009, and do you think that it compares with this?
I remember, so I was at the wild card game against the Twins, which seems like a month ago, but it wasn't. It was only a couple weeks ago. But I was at that game, and after the first inning, once Didi hit that home run, it felt like 2009. It felt like, hey, here we are, we're back, we have a chance. And in 2009, and it was the first year the stadium opened, I didn't have anything else to compare it to other than, the old Yankee Stadium. And so I had always had a lot of respect for Yankee fans, but seeing them come out, and we played really well at home that postseason, it definitely was a home field advantage for us. And you're seeing that this year with the way that the team is playing at home.
So can the Astros then use returning home for themselves as something to kind of get their mojo back?
I think it's the only thing they have right now. I've been very disappointed with the way the Astros have played. You want to see when you have 2 really good teams, which they are. These teams are both, superiorly talented, just have a lot of great things going for them. You want to see it's like a prize fight. You want to see both boxers giving their best shots. And these last 3 games, the Astros have been kind of in a corner just taking punches. So, I think the only way the Astros get back into this thing is Justin Verlander tomorrow night gets off to a really good start, holds the Yankees down for the first few innings, and then, Correa or Altuve or Springer or one of the big bats for the Astros hits a big home run, and the Astros go up 3 or 4-0. Because when the Astros were up 4-0 in Game 4, they knew that they had a pitcher that wasn't going to go 9 innings and a bullpen that wasn't very good. It's a different animal when Verlander's on the mound. If he gets the lead, watch out.
All right, here's a couple of questions from our listeners. Let's go to Dominic in the car. Dominic, you're on with Mark Teixeira.
Hey, Mark, how you doing, man?
Good, Dominic.
I was wondering, I haven't really heard anybody talk about this, but do you think there's a chance that if this goes 7, Hinch can throw McCullers? He didn't really pull him. I thought he pulled him way too early the other night. Maybe he's got 70 pitches in him, and we didn't touch him. And that's a scary scenario for me.
Yeah, in a Game 7, it's all hands on deck. You do whatever it takes to win the game. And one thing that we, now that I'm on the other side of it in the media, whether it's talk radio or in the papers or on Baseball Tonight, we always have to assume that everybody's healthy. We don't know. We don't know who's healthy. If McCullers is a little sore after that start. If McCullers is feeling good and he tells Hinch, I got a few innings in me, he's going to be in the game at some point. But we don't know exactly how the guys are feeling. But it's going to be all hands on deck.
Let's go to Roger in Oakdale. Roger.
Hey, Mark. First, I want to say I enjoyed watching you play ball. It's a pleasure to talk to you. Listen, Todd Frazier has been like some kind of a spark for the Yanks. Do you think there's a chance they re-sign him?
I don't, only because of Gleyber Torres. they're going to give Torres every opportunity next year to be the third baseman. And even if it's not opening day, you got Chase Headley that's under contract that's probably going to kind of slide over there if Torres needs a little bit of seasoning. But to sign Frazier, Frazier's still a good player. He's not that old. He's going to get a decent contract. And the Yankees, if they want to get under the threshold, the luxury tax threshold, I don't think they allocate dollars to Frazier. As much as they'd love to have him back, he's not going to play for $1 million.
Right.
So it'd be tough for me to see them bringing him in.
Now, this question I have to ask in a very careful way because I don't want to insult anybody. But Todd Frazier has a joy of life and has become like the cheerleader for the team, and they all love him. And the media loves him. He's a really nice man. Now, I go back to your time with the team, and Nick Swisher was a guy who had a great joy of life, tried to be the cheerleader of the team, and I didn't sense that everybody on the team loved him. What's the difference, if there is one?
Well, I don't know Todd Frazier that well. I just know him from playing against him, and I know that he truly enjoys playing in New York. We all love Swish, but Swish could just be a little bit too much sometimes.
Right.
It's like the mascot. Like, you want the Philly Fanatic to do all of his things, but if he's always around you, dancing around and jumping and blowing bubbles in your face, you're like, hey, dude, move on. So we love Swish. We loved having him as a teammate, but sometimes Swish was a little much. And that's not a knock on him. That's his personality. He's all in.
Yeah, you know what? It's funny because Nick thought I didn't like him, and I just said, I'm just not sure. We talked once, which I really appreciate that he came to me and asked. And I said, I'm not so sure I like the act. And he looked at me and said, dude, this is not an act. This is, and I really got to be close with him. I liked him when I realized that was really him. But I guess for players, sometimes it could be too much.
It is not an act at all. And I think Nick Swisher, and I've told a lot of people this, when Nick Swisher joined our team in 2009, along with me and CC and AJ, I thought he was so great for the Yankee old guard because he injected something into, Jeter and Posada and A-Rod and Pettit and Mo that they hadn't seen in years. And that was a guy that was willing to look silly, that was willing to do the silly interviews and to say things that we couldn't believe he said. And it mixed things up a little bit in a good way. And so Todd Frazier, I'm not sure if this team needed that. He mixes things up in a good way. You laugh at him, you laugh with him. He makes some great plays. He'll boot some balls at times, but then he'll have a one-handed swing when he's not even looking at the ball and hit a huge 3-run homer for you. And that's what you love about him.
Let's go to Paul and Kearney. Paul?
Hey, what's going on, guys?
How you doing?
Had a quick question. Good. Had a quick question for Mark. Regardless of what happens, from this point on, what kind of credit do you think Brian Cashman will get when it's all said and done, win or lose, in terms of potentially Executive of the Year, just really for staying the course and making this not even a rebuild, really just almost like a reincarnation of the Bombers?
Brian Cashman, first of all, should have a contract by now. I don't know why he doesn't have a contract. I have no idea what the negotiations are, but if the Yankees let him go, I think that's a huge mistake. He deserves more credit than he's getting. And I think the reason he doesn't get a whole bunch of credit is because people outside of the Yankees organization always just look at the Yankees and say, well, they spend $200 million a year, they should be winning. And that's not always fair because the Yankees, unlike, the Astros or the Cubs or some of these other teams, they are not allowed to go 4 straight years of being terrible. The media market, the fans will not allow that. And Brian Cashman was given a very tough job in that you have to recreate this roster, turn over this roster, bring in young talent, make some tough moves. Oh, but by the way, you still have to be relevant and win. And even in the down years, my last few years on the team when we had a bunch of guys hurt, including myself, and we knew that it was going to be a long shot for us to win another World Series, we still were good. We still won a lot of games. We made the playoffs and, still had some life. And Brian Cashman deserves all the credit for being able to win games and continue to rebuild the rosters, which is what he did.
Mark, I'm noticing something different about Joe Girardi. He seems more calm, more zen. It almost seems like he's kind of looking at things and smelling the roses a bit. I've kind of read that into maybe he may step away when this season is over. Have you noticed the change in his demeanor, and do you have a theory on why that is?
I have noticed it, and my theory, if I do have a theory, it's that the Game 2 blunder, which we've talked about ad nauseum, made him realize it's not about him. It's not about Joe Girardi and his binder, which I think it's hilarious. It's got his own Twitter feed, Joe Girardi's binder. It's not about the moves he makes. At the end of the day, this is baseball, and your guys have to go out and do it. So you can make a mistake. You can not push the right buttons and still win and watch the joy on the faces of your team because they're the ones going out, making the pitches, getting the hits, making the plays. And I think that took at least the last week and a half. It seems like it's taken a burden off Joe's chest that, hey, I can screw up and we can still win. It's not about me. It's about these guys.
Couple of text messages before we let you go. This is Sam from Brooklyn. Mark, do you think Dellin Betances will see the field again this season, and will he return next year?
This is so sad because I love Dellin as a person. I love him as a player. People forget this guy was they easily forget. This guy was the best reliever in baseball over the last 3.5 years. And, up until the All-Star break this year, he was the most dominant reliever that no one in baseball wants to face. But I don't think we'll see him unless it's a 10-run game. You saw in an 8-0 game, it was hard to bring him in. So this is just tough for me to see. I'm not sure if he'll be back. If some team wants to come out and give Brian Cashman or whoever the GM is going to be a nice prospect package for Dellin, they might jump on it and say, thanks for your service, but it's time to move on.
And this is Andrew from Connecticut. Who do you think will step up and get the big hit or hits off Verlander tomorrow night in Game 6?
You know what? I'm going to give my buddy Greg Bird some props because of the tough season he had. We spent a lot of time on text message this season. He was so frustrated when he was hurt, and he's played really well, kind of quietly this postseason with all the other star power around the Yankees.
I thought his hit last night was gigantic because it just released the pressure.
Huge. And that was a tough pitch. That's a ball it's actually a ball inside, off the plate in. He kept his hands in. Really nice swing. Got the rally started for the Yankees. But Birdie, he's not afraid of anything. And it's kind of one of the reasons that he got a lot of flack from people inside and outside the organization when he was hurt, because he never gets too excited about anything. He never gets too high or too low. And people are saying, "What, does this guy even really want to play?" Yeah, he wants to play. This is it's the Robinson Cano kind of syndrome, whatever it is. He's so good and so confident that it looks like he's not even trying out there. But that's because he's got a lot of talent and he's confident in himself.
Good guy, too. Really good guy.
Great guy.
Yeah.
Great guy.
Really a good young kid.